Welcome to the Town of Garner Town Council Work Session of August 27th. It's a beautiful day in Garner, and we got a beautiful audience here tonight. I'm sure the people at home are just as beautiful as they're listening in on this. But we have a great presentation to make later on, but we'll start calling our council work session to order, and I'll ask the deputy clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Dutton.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vance.
Here.
Councilmember Behringer.
Here.
Councilmember Dellinger.
Here.
Councilmember Matthews.
Here.
Councilmember Singleton.
Here.
Thank you. And now we do the mandatory adoption of the agenda. Most of you have picked up a copy. I know our council members have looked at it. And I will ask for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Mr. Vance makes the
Second.
motion, and Mr. Singleton makes a second. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. And our first order of business is what most of you came for, a presentation this evening. And I'm really honored to be able to present the James R. Stevens Service to Garner Award. We gave this to James. His family helped put this together for his 60th birthday in 1988. And then it caught on, and we did it year after year. I was on the selection committee the next year. I think it was all about the family the first year. They picked James. Then we named the award after him. But we're also glad that the Stevens family has passed along the honor of putting this recognition together over the past few years to make sure that it keeps going on. It's really designed to recognize people who make a long-term contribution, not a flash in the pan, not an overnight success. Who cares what you've done the last 5 or 10 years? What have you done in the last 30 or 40? That's what this is all about. I want to think just a minute about James Stevens, that I knew. He lived right down Vandora Avenue from me, and I knew at least his two oldest kids. They were still younger than me, Jimmy and Tim. But James lived his entire life within 5 miles of the farmhouse he was born in on what was on Benson Road. He was a product of the Garner schools. You can go to Garner schools and still be extremely successful, as he was. He helped put the lights on the Garner High baseball team. He was the first PTA president at Vandora Springs Elementary. He was a founding member of the Garner Civitan Club, served as its president. He was a leader of the Garner Methodist Church. His real public work came in with the Garner Board of Aldermen for quite an extended period. He was a leader at a time when our community was becoming a town. He lived a life of service, but he never sought awards or the spotlight. And that's the spirit we're trying to carry on with this award. It's for people who quietly do what they think every good citizen should do, and they make their contribution over a long period. And that brings us to Joe Sample. And I remember when I had the opportunity to go stop by his office and tell him that he had been chosen to get the award for the James R. Stevens Award. And he was very serious. He said, no, there's been a mistake. This is somebody else that's done much more than me. And I said, well, you're going to have to talk about that to the two people who nominated you, because they put together 4 pages of small print that covered over 50 years of your contributions here. And I finally convinced him that he wasn't getting out of it. He could exact his revenge on those nominators later at his own discretion, and he may do that tonight. I don't know. But Joe has been a longtime friend of mine. 50 years I've known this guy, and he's the model of service. The last 25 years or so have been quiet service. The first 25, not quite so quiet. When he was the editor of the Garner News, he had a smart comment or 2 cents worth, as Gray was telling me in his column, that there was not an egg that didn't get cracked, not a pot that didn't get stirred. He was a source of news. He kept us engaged. He kept us with our eyes on the ball. Then as he moved on it, and what really impressed me about Joe, he didn't just give his opinions. He finally decided to put his time where his mouth was, and he became a town alderman. He sat up here and took the heat that he had been dishing out. So this is somebody that's dedicated. This is a different guy. So we're here to recognize his contribution tonight. I'm going to call on Grace Singleton, who's not quite as old as Joe, but you've known Joe ever since you were a little boy, apparently, and you go back a long way. If you'd just tell us a little bit about Joe, we may get a comment or two from some other council members, and I'll probably call on one of his firehouse buddies down there to tell us the real truth of what went on. Gray, would you like to share a few thoughts?
Yes, sir, I will. First off, let me say that Mr. Sample and I are next door neighbors. And so for those of you who wrote up those eloquent 4 pages, come down our street on Friday and Saturday night and you'll hear a lot of hooting and hollering going on. At the Sample household, I'm joking, of course. I remember Mr. Sample when I was a young boy and then in high school and college reading his 2 cents worth column. And in this column, there was a picture of 2 pennies and his picture, his 2 cents worth. And he would give us his 2 cents worth, and sometimes I'd read it and it was entertaining, and sometimes I was like, gosh, who is this guy? And I didn't finally get to know him until I started working at the hardware store, Hudson's Hardware, and he came in as a customer, and I started knowing him there over the years. And then when I ran for the first time on election night and won, he came to my house. He and his wife were at the house, congratulated me, said he looked forward to working with me, and he gave me a lot of guidance, a lot of good suggestions, a lot of good thoughts, learned some things from Joe. He and Don Rohrbaugh were really good at helping me to I was only 30 when I ran and 31 when I got elected, so I was pretty green. A lot of people don't know some of the things that he did back then, and very few people in this room probably remember besides me and him. We did some things that needed to be done. We got the first sidewalk built in Garner's, had been like 20 or 30 years. We extended one on Vanderbilt Springs from Frederick to 7th Avenue to the light. First sidewalk Garner had built in like 30 years. That was a 3-2 vote. And people went crazy, and we built sidewalks. And of course, we're still catching up to trying to build sidewalks. That was the first one that had been built, and Joe was big on pushing that and supporting that, as he was on parks also. We did things with stormwater control that no one did. We were the first town in the county to have 25-year storm. No one else. Do you remember that? Now that's all 25, 50, 100-year storm. We were the first town in Wake County to push that because of flooding downstream right down on Vandor Avenue. And replaced a culvert that was controversial, but it hadn't flooded since. That's all I know. Also, a lot of people don't know this because it was just me and him and Rex Todd, but after I got elected, Rex had the vision for the GPAC. A lot of people had saved the school, and once they saved it, didn't know what to do with it, but Rex Todd knew what to do with it, what he wanted us to do with it. So me and Mr. Sample and Rex went out one day. We drove to Benson and looked at their school. We rode to Oxford and looked at their school, where they had redone it. And we went down to Moore County on another trip. And Rex convinced me and Joe with the vision of how you can do things here and save that auditorium and save that school and make it something that we'd be proud of. And we did. Took some time, took some money, made a few mistakes, but a lot of people don't remember us. Nobody remembers you and I and Rex. And God bless Rex, because he was the one who had the vision. He's the one whose vision is out there. And one good humorous one, I can't let it go by without this. In 1995, when he ran for re-election, Joe had a sign made on the top of his car. It was shaped in a triangle. Put it up there like the Pizza Hut sign, the Domino sign. Vote for Joe. 772, the phone number is Joe1. Call me, 772-JOE1, 5631. I've got it memorized. And I'll never forget that as long as I lived. The first time I saw that, he came to a town council meeting with that sign on his car, and we laughed so hard in the parking lot, the rest of the council. 772-JOE1, vote for Joe. And am I correct? You still have that sign? That's one of the best memories I can remember. But I know since then he has served many years working hard for serving on the Garner Volunteer and Fire Department Board and his other projects. He's been a smart businessman, a sly businessman. Joe knows what's going on. I learned that a long time ago. You're not going to pull the wool over his eyes. He's on top of things. And I enjoyed the time we served together. I still enjoy talking with him and congratulate him because it's a well-deserved award for somebody who has served Garner for some 40 to 50 years.
Thank you, Gray. Any other council members like to make a comment or a fond memory or two?
I have a humorous one, I think. I moved to Garner 31 years ago, and I've probably known Joe about 25, but I knew about Joe before I moved to Garner because one of my acquaintances worked at the newspaper. think I'm just going to leave it at that, Joe. But Joe has done an amazing job of serving Garner and understanding the heartbeat of the town and what we need and what we can do. So, Joe, our appreciation to you many times over.
Thank you.
Just appreciative. We're always overdue for coffee. Just appreciative of the time that you give to me and share your wisdom and your passion for the town. You're very deserving of this award, and every time I say that, he's like, "Oh no," he says the same thing. Just a model to emulate for building and maintaining community. So, thank you, Joe.
And Mr. Sample, we had a brief conversation upstairs, and although we haven't known each other personally very long, we got to know each other some while on the fire board and on the MOU committee. And I just saw you as a very mild-mannered, humble man. And Mr. Sample said to me, "You didn't know me when I was a reporter." But I would say, sir, it's been a pleasure to work with you, and I believe that you're very deserving for the Stevens Award.
Thank you.
Just a comment, Joe, you're a true friend, and I appreciate your friendship. And been in the political world, I know when I first got elected, you give me a lot of wisdom, and since then, occasionally we'll hook up and we'll talk about things. You give me your thoughts on it. The difficulty is running you down because you're in so many places. But when you do run him down, he's got a lot to say and a lot of experience. And I appreciate your mentoring and your guidance. And congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And against my better judgment, I'm going to ask Chief Poole to come up and say a few words. If you would come over here and kind of warm up this microphone for Mr. Sample.
I'm not putting my back in.
That's what I'm talking about. You might want to be over there.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Before I talk junk about Joe Sample, I want to address the Stevens family and thank y'all for the service that he gave, and thank you for continuing to support this award. We were outside and we were looking at the names of the people that have received this award, and I've spent my entire life in Garner, and these are great people. Everybody on that truly served Garner to the best they could. And so I would say this: it is an honor to be recognized, Joe, as to going on that plaque with the James R. Stevens Award and the people that's received it. It truly is. And people talk about old Garner and new Garner. Well, new Garner needs to know where old Garner came from, and these people built this town. And I mean that. And so I am honored to have make a couple words about Mr. Sample. Mr. Kennedy is going to join me in a minute because he helped plot and demise this award recommendation, and there were several others too. So this started as a conversation amongst Mr. Kennedy and I, and then we got some other people involved. Judy Bass was involved and some other people as conversations about all these things that Joe has done in the entirety of his time in Garner. And so I'm only going to speak on two things. I grew up in the fire service, and so on Sunday afternoon, eating lunch, my grandma would look at my granddad and say, "What did Joe Sample write about the fire department this week?" And then my granddad would say words that I can't repeat in here. And so I grew up a natural enemy to Joe Sample. And then fast forward, Joe Sample has been one of my bosses for 15 years. And I asked him one day, I said, why did you beat up the fire department in the paper? And this was Joe's response: "I need to sell papers, and the fire department sells papers." And I understood then where Joe was coming from. But one really quick short story, this is true. Joe wrote an article years and years ago about the fire department, how it had two cigar boxes: "Tis paid" and "Tain't paid." And that's how we paid our bills. And he wrote this article, and it made a lot of firefighters mad. But you fast forward, my grandfather passed away, and we're going through some of his belongings, and there were two cigar boxes. I have them in my office. And so every time that now the highest leader of our organization says something, I make sure he knows where his "tis paid" and "tain't paid" box is. So the fire chief gets accolades and recognition for anything the fire department does. But I work for a board of directors, and they are the highest level of government that we have. And this is the truth. In the 15 years that I've been the fire chief, to my knowledge, Joe Sample has missed one board meeting. It's because he was in the hospital, and he asked me to bring him an iPad so he could participate. He has been there behind the scenes the entire time. And we, you can't say fireman anymore. It offends people. But that term, it doesn't exclude anybody. That term means something to us. Being a fireman means something. And Joe Sample's never put on turnout gear. He's never been in a burning building. But you're a fireman, and you've stood beside us the entire time. And I am honored to be here tonight. So I'd ask Mr. Kennedy if he would come up and say a couple words. But based on the paper and the fire department, thank you for your service.
Good evening, folks. It won't be bad, Joe. Joe beat me to Garner. I think he got here in the late 60s. We arrived in 72. And the way it is around here, we're both considered transients. We're still on probation. And one day we might get our official license to be Garner citizens. But I knew of him in the early days, but I didn't know him. When I first really caught a different view was in his term on the council when he was involved, and he and the council were involved on some discussions, as they did many a night in council chambers, where the main topic was sewer capacity or wastewater treatment, and how was Garner going to grow if we did not have that capacity. And infrastructure was something of interest to me. And the thing that impressed me is in thinking about it is that the council, Garner's got a lot of pride in itself, and they were willing to spend some money to get a wastewater treatment plant on Swift Creek. Well, that was just not going to happen. The state was not going to allow it to happen. And so I don't know how long it took, but they negotiated a contract with Raleigh for Raleigh to take over our utilities, which was, I'm not sure what the vote was. It could have been a split vote, but it was one of the best decisions that the town ever had, because since then there hasn't been a single meeting, hardly. Maybe there was one or two when we were buying additional capacity. But that hasn't been an issue for the town about knowing where its water and sewer capacity is it going to be available. I can tell you today that you have sufficient capacity to build another Garner just the size that it is today. It's in the works, and it's in effect bought and paid for. That's worth tens of millions of dollars for the decision that was made back in the 90s, maybe it was early 2000. The other thing, I'll be very brief, but the one thing that goes unsaid is Joe has a vocation, and then he has multiple avocations, and it'd be a good long list, and I hope I got the vocation and avocation in the right context. But one of those is one of the newest things in Garner, and well, that is in its presence, but not its age, and that was the depot, and now the museum. And Joe was a charter member of the Garner Area Historical Society, and is a silent but effective partner in not only the museum for everybody to enjoy, but for a number of other organizations. You could almost call Joe Sample Mr. Invisible, because he does not seek the limelight. He's not seeking, he does, the one thing about folks that really support different activities, the last thing they want you to know, want the public to know, is who you are and how much you're giving, because then you're soft touched for the next event. But, and that's, if you've been there and done that, you know what I'm talking about. But I would have to say in my final remarks that his service spans many different areas of the community, including local government as well as civic organizations. He built his business and he built his home in Garner. He embodies what the James R. Stevens Award was intended for: service to Garner. You're well deserved, my friend, Joe.
Thank you, Buck and Matt. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Tim Stevens to meet me at the podium over here. We're going to present the award to Joe. Then we're going to let him tell his side of the story.
I'm Tim Stevens. I'm James's second son. Jimmy is the oldest son. He's supposed to do the talking, but his wife is in the hospital, so he's not here. Growing up, Joe was probably the most discussed person in my house. Every night, Joe was mentioned. Joe and Daddy served on the town board together. Most of the times they agreed, and sometimes they disagreed vehemently. But the great thing about it, they might have different opinions, but I know from Daddy's standpoint, I assume from Joe's, it was never personal. They could take a stand and fight just as hard as they could because they differed on what they thought was best. But when it was over, it was over. They just came and talked and tried to find the best solution, because they both believed a great deal the best solutions come when different ideas come out. And they just talked about it. And I kind of miss those days where, the guy who has a different opinion is your enemy. That's the way it is now, it seems like. And then the other thing is that my mother worked for him. And as I worked for the newspaper for about 50 years, and I had some good editors. I think I remember mostly the bad ones. A bad editor will make you go in there and think, why would I even try? I am no good. And a good editor would make you always want to go write something else. And Joe always made my mother, who worked for him, want to write something else. The always kind of looked when I figured out how newspapers worked a little bit later in life. Joe would be the one that was intent on selling papers. And Mother was the one that made people want to smile. She wrote there's something that would make you happy, or write something that would make you say, I didn't know that, and like that person a little bit more. And that was, my mother was devoted for that. And every time I ever ran into Joe, as long as Mother was living, invariably, how's your mom? How's your mother? Last time we were in a meeting together, the first thing you said, when did your mother die? I miss her. And so when I think of Joe, I don't think of the times when Daddy's at the end of the table and Mother's beside him, and Daddy's talking about what Joe said at the town board meeting, and Mother's talking about what happened at work. I'd rather go to Joe Sample discussion. I think about his love for our community, his love for my family, and just how he illustrated to the whole city and the town that you don't have to agree on everything, but it don't mean you hate people for it. The other thing I'd say is I can think of no one that my mother and my father would be more pleased to receive this award than Joe Sample.
Thank you, Tim. Stick around just a minute. Joe, if you would come on up. Bring your notes, bring your notes. Or you got it all up here? No. Okay, we're gonna have the photo op presentation. We'll do it here where Rick can take our picture. And then we'll do another photo op with all your fans later out on the front step. Cause we got a meeting. But Judge, seriously, it's my honor, it's my privilege to present the James R. Stevens Award for service to Garner to you. We appreciate what you've done for the town. I appreciate what you've done for me. Get your notes and come back. We're gonna put this right here. Take your time, then we'll have another photo op with all the fans.
Okay, thank you, sir. Honorable Mayor, Town Council members, members of the Stevens family, and the many gathered guests. Now, I have been advised and warned by a recent Stevens Award winner not to forget to recognize my wife of 34 years, Angela, who unfortunately can't be here tonight. I also want to recognize my two sisters, Louise Haas and Elizabeth Yegelinner, and her husband, Steve, who motored here from Indiana for this ceremony. As I told Mayor Buddy Gupton when he notified me, receiving the coveted and prestigious James R. Stevens Service to Warner Guard Award is truly a pinnacle of my life, and I am profoundly proud yet humbled as the winning nominee. Now, many of you know that I'm a journalist, and by trade, I talk with my fingers on the keyboard. So forgive me as I read this script instead of just belting out words of gratitude. I'm not a public speaker like my good friend Fire Chief Matt Poole and Tim Stevens. I got to tell you that I haven't been so honored since winning the betting pool with the old men down at Toot and Tell a number of years ago. Bought everybody breakfast, and they honored me with the Chitlin of the Month Award. Oddly enough, I feel extremely close to the Stevens family. It started out in the early 1970s when I purchased the Garner News. It was housed in a 4-room office on Main Street, mainly occupied by Jones Insurance. The Garner News, occupying the back corner office, was edited by Evelyn Stevens. While there was only one typewriter, there were 2 chairs, so Evelyn and I got along just dandy. She explained that her husband, James R. Stevens, was a town alderman, as the ruling body was known in those days. Does that put a wee bit of restriction on what you write for the newspaper, I questioned. Evelyn flashed back her winning smile, her eyes twinkling, and regaled me about the time the town board held a secret meeting. Her husband inadvertently told her about it, and her loyalty to the newspaper came through in big black letters the following week as she told the town through words and pictures about the meeting. The newspaper didn't play favorites in those days. Everybody was fair game. As Jerry Jones likes to remind me, the role of the newspaper is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. I have previously told you how we published a picture of a stuck fire truck across all 8 columns of the newspaper. The paper also featured the mayor and aldermen, whether they did good or bad, in the eyes of the newspaper, of course. James Stevens didn't always know whether I was furring or guinea. But there was more to the Stevens family. I knew sons Jimmy and Bob Stevens when they were employed at various times by the Garner Police Department. Tim Stevens was a bodacious sports reporter for the Raleigh Times and later for the Raleigh News and Observer. I tried to hire him, unsuccessfully, for the Garner News. Now I serve with him on the board of the Garner Area Historical Society. Sister Vicky, back in the day, was editor of the Garner Senior High School newspaper, the Wren Rag, and I published that paper for the school. Evelyn also introduced me to the Garner Chamber of Commerce, where I have been a continuous member since 1971. I think of those early chamber days, and the only other survivors I recall are George Rucker and Raleigh Bannister, who together colluded to engineer my election as president of the chamber in 1975. I think that James Stevens was proud of me when I ran for the Board of Aldermen seat in 1991. Well, he let me put a political sign in his yard. On a couple of occasions, he called to inform me what a smart vote would do in this rezoning case or that developmental action. And I got to tell you, sometimes I just wasn't that awful smart. When I ran for re-election, I didn't ask to put a political sign in his yard, and he didn't request one. But you know, that's life in a small town. Several years later, James asked me to be the main speaker to introduce the winners of the James R. Stevens Service to Garner Award. I was honored to introduce Evelyn Stevens as the proud winner in 1995. Now, that was a special day. I've also got to salute my good friend, the late Mayor Ronnie Williams. He asked me to be his sounding board when he first ran for an alderman seat in 1985. The payback was his help for various projects. One, for instance, was getting started a July 4th celebration, first at Garner Senior High School and later at Lake Benson Park. There were others where his help was invaluable. I won't name them all, but especially in getting started Garner's first rescue squad, renovating the Pearl Street building for the rescue squad, and then several years later, erecting a new building for the squad at the corner of Vandor Springs and Foxwood. When Judy Bass, Karen Paget, Kay Whaley, and others formed the Garner Area Historical Society, I think they figured if they asked an old coot like me to be on their board, it would encourage others to participate. The Historical Society has moved, with help from the town, the old depot building and a caboose off Old Garner Road to a safe location. Those women are experts in fundraising and finding old Garner treasures to put in the museum, which is housed in the depot. Serving with this distinguished group has been a high honor and a distinct pleasure. You know, things progressed between the Garner Fire Department and me over the years. At a practice house burning a number of years ago, the then fire chief bet me $100 he could stop the raging flames in less than 30 seconds. People, the entire front of the house was a wall of flames, 180 degrees from left to right. It was hot flames. It kind of gave the idea what afterlife would be like if you weren't on the bus to heaven, but instead sliding down a several mile long thin razor blade direct to Hades. $100? Okay, chief, you're on. In 20 seconds, the chief was $100 richer, and I was $100 wiser. I didn't realize you could fog the water out of the hose. By fogging the water, you create steam, and that makes water more effective. It pushes the flames back, as Councilman Phil Matthews can attest. And that was just the beginning of a years-long education from that chief and from Chief Poole about the fire service and the science of firefighting. Several years later, the former fire chief asked me to serve as a voting member on the fire board of directors. What an exciting time to learn about the fire service, yet also offer some business suggestions to a wonderfully great organization. The then President Steve Woodall and other current board members like Kenny Walker, Mark Wilson, Carl Williams also greatly and gently guided my understanding of the fire service. I truly thought that being elected to the position of President of Garner Fire and Rescue was the top of my career, but it pales as being compared to being awarded the James R. Stevens Service to Garner Award. Where else but in Garner can you be honored for doing what you love to do? Thank you to the selection committee, to the nominators, Chief Poole, former Councilman Buck Kennedy, for this award, to all the gathered who have come to witness this ceremony tonight. From the bottom of my heart, thank you and many blessings.
Thank you, Joe, and I'd ask Tim to join me again. Tim, if you would join me up. If you would join me up front for the official photo op, bring the trophy, please, not the name. Tim, if you would join us, please. You have to have one for me as well, too. Tim? We'd like to hear what the seal's behind. We'll share the picture. Right there. All right. This is a sign. Y'all like each other. Very sign. Now look smart, make it look smart. Should laugh.
Ready, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. All right.
Joe, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time, sir. Well, let me tell you, if you think that was fun, stick around for the library bond. That's going to be even more fun. If there's anything we love as much as local newspapers and Garner Fire, it's our library. But we're going to talk about that for a while. Y'all welcome to stay as long as you like, or you can leave politely now. It won't hurt our feelings. You can be congratulating Joe and his family out there. Hey, Johnny, close the door, man. Well, I guess we can see who our real friends are. Joe's got plenty. We have a very special part coming up next about the library bonds. And it's so special, we have some special guests. I'm going to ask our town manager, Jody Miller, to introduce them because she has worked with some of these people and has a little history here. Jody, if you would introduce our special guests.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening to you and members of council. It's with great pleasure that I introduce to you this evening our guests from Wake County to talk about our amazing library system here in Wake County. With us today is the new library director, Tammy Baggett. Tammy and I worked together in Durham County for a number of years, and I'm just so excited to see her be part of the Wake County library system. With Tammy this evening is Katrina Vernon, who's the assistant library director. And we also have a familiar face in the audience that a few of you may remember and recognize. Matt Roylance, the Deputy Community Services Director, is also with us. So I'd ask them to come to the podium. I think we're going to do an introduction of Tammy first and then talk about the 2024 library bonds.
All right. Well, thank you for letting me back in the building. I appreciate it. It's nice to see familiar faces and be back at a place where I've got so many fond memories. Before we jump into the presentation, I'm going to take just a minute to introduce Tammy to you all a little bit more. Tammy Baggett is our new library director. She's been on the job now for all of 2 weeks, so go easy on her. We stole her from Durham County, where she worked for 13 years as the library director, and she's also got experience in some other library systems across the state, New Hanover County, Forsyth County, Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and then also she worked in Fulton County in the Atlanta area. So she has a lot of experience. We are very excited to have her. The transition period has been kind of long. It's been about almost a year and a half since our library director retired. And so the staff, I think, is very excited to have a permanent leader in place. And as the person who was the interim library director for that time, I'm very, very excited that we have a permanent leader in place. So we'll introduce Tammy just for a second and then jump into the presentation. Or let her introduce herself.
Good evening, everyone. To the Honorable Mayor and members of the council, I am delighted to be here tonight. It is a true honor to now be the director of Wake County Libraries. I am originally from Clinton, North Carolina, or Clinton, however you usually hear that with that southern accent. I grew up on a farm, and I've had a love for libraries pretty much forever. The bookmobile would come to my house, and I thought my parents arranged that just for me. I learned later that other people had the bookmobile coming to their house also. But I am just super excited to be here and to be a part of Wake County Libraries. Wake County Libraries have a stellar reputation, and I want to do my part to continue building on that reputation, and I look forward to getting to know each of you and just serving the community. Thank you.
All right. Let me pull up the presentation. Okay, Katrina and I are going to walk through the slides, and we're happy to answer questions along the way if you have any, so please speak up and flag us down. The library system is a really important, sort of a crown jewel, in my opinion, the county services that we provide to the community. We have a top-notch library system, and we're very fortunate, and we want to make sure that we continue to invest in that system to keep it as great as it is. And because it's a county priority, we have a $142 million bond on the ballot for November 5th. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the projects that are in there. Just to put some context behind it, we haven't had a library bond in a while, so we feel like we're overdue. It's been since 2007. We did the last one, and we weren't necessarily expecting that it would take quite that long, but between the recession on the front end of that and COVID on the back end of that, it took a while to get all those projects built, but we are finally at a point now where we're ready to move forward, and we want to keep that investment going. So I'm going to turn it over to Katrina. She's going to talk a little bit about the projects that are included in the bond, and then I'll be back after that.
Hi everyone, Katrina Vernon, Assistant Library Director for the Wake County Library System. What you can see here is a map of all of the potential projects that will be included if the bond referendum passes in November. And so you see a lot of different colors here. We have several different types of projects that we are doing within this bond. Those include renovations, which are shown in blue, expansions, really just one of those, which is in pink, 2 library replacements in orange, 2 new libraries in purple, and then the green ones are the ones that are not being touched as part of this renovation. So we'll jump in a little bit more on what these projects are. So the largest part of this bond is new libraries at $67.1 million. And our goal with new libraries is to increase the number of residents of Wake County that are within a 10-minute drive time of their library. It's really important to us that people are able to get to a public library and use those resources. So to help achieve that, we are planning a new community library in Rolesville. Rolesville is the only municipality in Wake County that does not currently have a public library, and so it's long overdue for us to build one there. A new community library in the Friendship area of Apex, which is Western Apex, and that will really help, both of those 2 projects will really help us fill in some gaps in our drive time map. Then those 2 library replacements, the Athens Drive Community Library is currently situated in the Athens Drive High School. They're planning a renovation, and when they reopen, we will not have a space in that building anymore. So we will be seeking a new property to build a standalone facility for residents in that area. We're also planning to replace the Wendell Community Library. Wendell is our smallest library at just over 4,000 square feet, and it is no longer adequately serving the population of Wendell, which is rapidly growing. So we're excited to have a standalone library that we build that's much larger in that area. And then the last project within this category, we don't have all the details about yet. The Board of Commissioners have a couple of interests in a new facility. That includes addressing digital equity concerns across the county and also improving library service in Southeast Raleigh. So the Board of Commissioners for Wake County will continue to have conversations about what would be most meaningful and beneficial to the residents of Wake County before determining exactly what that project will be. The next category is library expansion, and this is of our Fuquay-Varina Community Library. When we built the Fuquay-Varina Community Library, we built it knowing that in the future we would most likely need to expand because of the growth in that area of the county, and also because Southeast Regional, which is right here, is the closest regional library to that southern area of the county. And it's a bit of a drive. So we knew that we would need to increase regional library service to that southernmost part of the county. And we'd be able to do that through this expansion. And then lastly, but I actually feel that this is one of the most important areas in the bond, is library renovations. We still need to focus on maintaining all of our library facilities. So of course, it's important for us to build new libraries to expand our footprint, but we also need to make sure that the libraries that we currently have are well maintained and usable for our residents. And so you can see the list here of the libraries that would be renovated as part of this bond. And of course, Southeast Regional Library is part of that. Now, a lot of you have probably gone through the renovation process before, have been here when Southeast Regional was last renovated in 2016. So you might have sort of an idea of what that would include. We always would do new carpet and paint for any renovation, just to give it a little bit of a fresh look. We will most likely look at the shelving, make sure we have enough shelving, look at the orientation, think about how people use that building, kind of how they walk through the building. We may upgrade desks, we may upgrade sort of the programming areas, and then we would also look at the systems in that building. So electrical, security, HVAC, the roof, and see what needs to be refreshed in that as well. So we're really excited that Southeast Regional is part of this project, and we're excited to talk to the residents of Garner and tell them more about this project. And then I'm going to hand it back over to Matt.
Okay. I just wanted to touch on some of the questions the primary question that people always have when it comes to a bond, and what's it going to do to the tax rate? So fortunately for us, it's not a significant increase on the tax rate. It's a fraction of a cent, which in our mind makes it relatively affordable, but we understand that that's every little bit does count. We've been trying to communicate what that means in a way that maybe is more relatable than talking about the impact on the tax rate. And so we've been describing it as if you're a homeowner, for every $100,000 of home value, it's $2.50 a year. So for the average homeowner in Wake County with a house of about $462,000, it would cost $11.50 a year. So we are trying to get that information out. All of this information and more is available on the website. We have a frequently asked questions section so that the community can go and find out more about all of these projects and all the other questions that they might have about the bond. We also have the ballot language. This is what it will look like. It will be probably at the end of a very long ballot because it's a presidential election year and there's a lot on there. One thing that we are pointing out when we talk to people in the community is that while we have identified a list of projects that we believe will be in the bond, and we're planning for that, the bond language is just for the total amount and that it's going to be spent on libraries. So it is always possible that something comes up and things change. Maybe we aren't able to build a project after all because we can't find a site, or just there are things that come up. So the specific projects aren't listed here, but the total of $142 million is. Also wanted to talk a little bit about some of our communication resources. We have a great communications team with Wake County, and they have been helping us get some materials ready to help get the word out so people understand what's in the bond. All the materials that we're doing this year, for the first time, because this has been an area of new emphasis for us, are being translated into other languages that are spoken throughout the community. So, of course, English the vast majority of what we're producing is for the English-speaking residents, but we are also recognizing some of the other top languages that are spoken in the county. So there'll be brochures and other materials that are available in Spanish, Chinese, Telugu, and Hindi. So we're hoping that makes it as accessible to as many people as possible so they can learn about what's in the bond. And as I mentioned before, we have a web page that's active now, so residents can go there to find out more information, or if they just Google, Wake County Library Bond, it'll take them there. We are also producing brochures, bookmarks, flyers, and posters like the one that you see here, retractable banners, that sort of thing. We also have email lists from library users. So we're doing everything that we can think of to get the word out. And we've actually been in touch already with the town staff who've been super helpful about helping us brainstorm, what sort of community events we might be able to go to and where we might be able to put some brochures for town residents to learn more. So we definitely appreciate that support. And that's it. If you have any questions, we'd love to answer them.
Well, thank you very much. Any other comments from you, Town Manager?
No specific comments. Just want to thank our guests from Wake County for being here, for not only having the opportunity to meet Tammy in person, but also to give us more information that we can share with the community about the 2024 library bond. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Stand by. Let's see what questions we might have. Let's start down with Mr. Vance. Any questions, comments?
I have no questions.
Mr. Dellinger?
Yeah, just kind of a quick question about the expansion of the system throughout the county, and what sort of, if any, partnerships does the library do with developers, and what is, to find space, since real estate is at a premium, what are some of the best practices or things that have happened throughout the county that we should kind of keep our eyes open for?
Yeah, there are a couple of partnership scenarios have come forward already as we're thinking about these bonds. Actually, several of them have been with other municipalities. So, for example, the Rollsville Community Library, we're partnering with the town of Rollsville because they have a new municipal campus and they are making space on the campus for the library. And so that's, well, not with a private developer, that is a partnership. And those municipal partnerships have always worked really well for us. I mean, you can see that here with Southeast Regional. The same is going to be true with Wendell. The new library that we're building is going to be co-located with their town hall and community center, the new one that they're building. So that's really an ideal scenario for us. We are from time to time either approached by developers, or that this hasn't happened yet, but we could approach developers as well. And if there's a large community being built, sometimes it makes a lot of sense for both us and the developer to locate a library there, because that's where a lot of library users will be coming from. A lot of times it just comes down to what sort of space is available, because they have to make the development work from their end, but we have certain things that we're looking for. We are generally looking for a freestanding building that we can own, and sometimes that works in their financial model and sometimes it doesn't. We do consider other options. I mean, we've leased space in shopping centers, or we've been in multi-story buildings and other things. So it's not that that's the only way that we'll do it, but that's usually our starting point. And but if we can find a developer that it makes sense for us to work with, we're definitely open to that.
Thank you.
I just have one question for Matt. What can we do to get you to come back and visit us more often?
Pass this bond.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to have a reason to be here, and I hope this won't be the last time.
Yes, Matt, what else is going to be on the ballot for any county bond referendums besides the library? There are other county projects, other county referendums?
This election cycle, there will not be. I mean, sometimes there are, but in this case, no. And I know there'll be some other municipal ones. Some of the towns have other bonds. So depending on where you're voting, you might see more than one local referendum. But for the county, just this one.
Just this one referendum. Okay,
Yep.
That's good to know. Thanks for coming. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to see you again, young man, and wish you well, and welcome to Wake County. I think you'll find it a great place to be, as well as Garner, and a great presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. Well,
Thank
do
you
you
for
have any
having
other
us.
questions or observations for us?
No, I guess just that we really appreciate the support, and both from you all and the staff helping us get the word out to residents of Garner. So thank you for having us, and thank you for helping share the information.
Well, thank you. You have a program to be proud of countywide. Your plans are fantastic. I know there's a lot of excited citizens out there. Everybody loves the library. So thank you very much for what you're doing. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Okay, that brings up item number 2 on our agenda tonight. That's the Economic Development Annual Update, which includes the quarterly update. How timely. Our presenters are Nate Groover and Shayla Douglas. We're eager to hear what good news you're bringing us tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Council. Appreciate your time tonight as we kind of provide a recap of last year's activities and a little bit of a take on what's coming in the future. So appreciate your time tonight. So again, I always want to be sure to start off with the framework of the department. These are the areas that we're focused on every day. So business recruitment and retention, site and product development, entrepreneurship and small business, and community promotion and marketing. So we'll start with business recruitment and retention. I know I was before you about a month ago with Michael Haley from Wake County, kind of just going over the need for more product in our pipeline that we are able to submit for business recruitment opportunities. But here is the kind of recap of last year's the numbers. So 128 requests for information to requests for sites that we received. Pretty small number that we were actually able to submit for based on the product that we have available. So again, not that Wake County is not allowing us to submit, but just the fact that, again, I know you heard me say last time, you can't sell from an empty cart. And right now, the product available is pretty low. So just not able to submit for those opportunities. But of the 128 requests for information we received, that totaled 15,900 jobs and $29 billion in investment. That's the largest total investment I've ever seen for a year for one county receiving requests. So that was good to see. And then from those, we did have 2 site visits. Again, I know I covered this last month, but this is the kind of small bucket of the current product we have available. That picture you see right there, that's the Inc. 4300 facility, the 180,000 square foot life sciences space that we'll continue to actively market and submit for opportunities as they come across, as well as one of the remaining buildings at Beacon, and then Garner Business Park 70 and Garner Commerce Center 70. So that picture right there is Garner Commerce Center 70. It was working with their brokers on trying to get a potential tenant in there. In the stats from 2020, 2.6 million square feet absorbed. The good news out of that is 27 new businesses in that 22.6 million square feet. So that's a good number there. And then the total we have remaining is 155,000 square feet. So moving on to site and product development. We are very happy of a new partnership that we're working with in Wake County for the Wake County Infrastructure Pilot Program. Our friends at Wake County selected us as the initial community to work with in this program. The main purpose of this program is, in the working group, is to define the gaps in infrastructure in Wake County, look at where existing infrastructure is, look at where the sites are going, and then try to bridge that gap, get the infrastructure into the sites that we see are going to be growing and in need of that infrastructure. So in the working group, truly is working group. So we have representatives from NCDOT, Raleigh Water, our energy and gas providers, Wake County Planning, and then all the fiber providers. So basically all the infrastructure providers that would be in need to locate a building. All right, moving on to promotion. So again, I know y'all are familiar with our Choose Garner NC website that we have, kind of geared towards corporate real estate professionals, site selectors, basically people outside of Garner that will Google Garner, North Carolina. This will take them there and then give them information about our community. And then we also have our Downtown Garner website too, that lets everyone know, residents and active community participants, of everything that's going on in downtown. And then one new thing that we're proud to roll out as of today. So the very talented Mari Howe worked on our new landing page for economic development. So when you come to the landing page, you can see the links there for the Choose Garner website, our DGA website, but then also take you to kind of different programs, initiatives, and kind of what's happening, news stories as far as economic development is related. So there's a page on there with the kind of infrastructure program. So we're very happy to have this page and really appreciate Mari's help in helping us build this. And then another piece to add to the promotion items there is our Downtown Garner brochure. Shayla worked very hard on this, getting this out, working with all the businesses in Downtown Garner to make sure that their information was well represented so we can get this information out. And a mailing will be going out to Garner residences to continue to highlight Downtown Garner. So moving on to entrepreneurship, one of our favorite areas. So Shayla and I both serve on the School Business Alliance for South Garner and Garner Magnet High School. So working with the students there, trying to encourage careers in entrepreneurship. And the programs that come out of that are the Reality of Money program, Address for Success, job interview preparation, where we kind of sit down and kind of go through some mock job interviews. And then Mayor and Jody, I know that y'all are familiar with the mock town council presentations that we do here at town to kind of showcase what's going on in Garner and how we govern. Now we'll pass it over to Shayla to talk about launch and a few DGA items.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be presenting in front of you tonight. I know last time I was sick as a dog, so glad y'all are actually able to hear me this time. So with Launch Garner, we are doing an official retooling of the program in partnership with Wake Tech and feedback from former Launch Garner participants. So with this change, we are switching from our fall schedule to a spring schedule. That way it accommodates more participants as well, because the holidays and vacations and things of such. And then as well, Wake Tech is doing a grant competition that finishes right after our new schedule. So we'll be starting in January and ending in March. And that way they're prepared for the grant competition where they can get up to, I believe, $50,000 in grant money for their business. So we heard feedback that participants felt like they would be more prepared if they were entering the competition fresh out of class rather than it's been 4 months of information. And then along with that, we have also introduced the Fifth Gear space at 120 East Main Street, which was designed by Graphics House. So this is designed to be sort of a touchdown space for launch graduates that don't have brick and mortar locations yet, but need somewhere to work and conduct business. So there's 4 kind of designated areas that launch graduates or referees from our Launch Garner partners will be able to use. And then I would also like to invite everyone. We are having an alumni and informational session about Launch Garner here at Town Hall on September 19th from 6 to 8 p.m. So we're providing information about the new style of program, and we'll also be having Launch Garner alumni come and speak about their experience and provide any feedback for potential participants. And then with our Launch Garner partners, we work with both of the Rotary Clubs, the Garner Economic Development Corporation, Wake Tech, the Downtown Garner Association, Choose Local, and the Garner Chamber. And then for our economic development partners, as mentioned, we mainly work with Garner Economic Development Corporation, Downtown Garner Association, and the Garner Chamber. And for the Downtown Garner Association, we've had a lot going on this past year. We've had 2 new board members, David Forrest, who is a banker with Fidelity Bank, and Steve Cece, who is a technical analyst for Alphanumeric. Last year, we had 265 volunteer hours, which is valued at over $8,300. We are very thankful for our volunteers and appreciate them. Ms. Kathy still sits on our board. Very appreciative of all our volunteers and staff time that take time out of their day, at least an hour. If they come to events, 4 hours out of the month that they donate to DGA. And for 2024, we are having 4 events, which are 4 Market on Mains, 3 food truck rodeos, and 3 Got to Be Garner markets. And our first Got to Be Garner market will be this Saturday from 12 to 4. So we would love to see everyone come out if you can. And then for our 23-24 statistics, we had 1 new business open up in downtown, Steep Right Up, which is a tea shop, very popular. So if you want to visit it, it's 111 West Main Street. We had 2 buildings go through rehabilitation projects, Shady's, and we also had Lee Carroll with his HVAC company do some additional renovations to his building as well. With Steep Right Up coming, we added 1 new full-time job and 1 new part-time job to downtown Garner, and we had $177,000 in public investment and $843,000 in private investment. So that includes building upgrades, property acquisition, anything that private businesses put into downtown Garner. So we love to see that, almost $1 million just last fiscal year. And then for downtown, we have a couple of new projects. We are about to launch a downtown incentive grant, which is $2,000 per year for eligible businesses. So we wanted to try to introduce that as a way to help downtown businesses. We don't have many. We don't have a lot of funds to give, but we want to be able to provide something for businesses that they can use for improving their business. And that's currently in lawyer review. And once that is out of lawyer review, it'll be ready for businesses to apply and receive grant funds. Most exciting this past week, our new banners, they were designed by Graphics House as well. So we have 11 new banners for downtown because the other ones were kind of either missing or beat up. So it kind of provides a fresh new look. And then we're currently working with Public Works about repainting the poles and giving those poles an upgrade and some TLC as well. So that way it matches the new banners. We are also in the process of switching the lights. If you have been downtown, we have lights that go across the top of the buildings as well as bistro lighting in between on Rand Mill. So our new contract with the company provides more permanent lighting because, as you know, if it rains or if there's storms, they tend to come down. So this will provide more permanent installation of the lights, as well as they are now color changing. So when we have special events or holidays, that we're able to light them to different colors. We also have Food Truck Fridays that are happening every Friday from 5 to 8. This was kind of spurred decision, but it's we've had business owners ask if there was a way to have food trucks on Fridays when they're doing events, since we don't really have a lot of food options open at that time. I think Full Bloom closes at 6, and Nana's closes at 6 as well, so that's our last food option. So we've been bringing in food trucks, about at least 3 up to 5 each Friday. So businesses like Shady's, Aristotle, Zen, Wine and Yoga, they're able to have some type of food for their customers. And so far it's been well received. We've the businesses downtown really like being able to have that option and they don't have to plan it. So that's good. And then as Nate was saying, the brochure, the downtown brochure, there's copies of it at your seat if you would like to look at it. We're going to be mailing out at least 5,000 of those to targeted tracks throughout Garner. So trying to target families, people that would want to come downtown. And we're only doing 5 since it's so late in the year. And then once we have our 2025 event list and updated brochure, when that comes out, that will be mailing out more. And then I'll pass it back to Nate.
Thank you. Yes, I also want to be sure to highlight the good work that we're doing with GEDC, the Garner Economic Development Corporation. I know Mr. Vance can testify. We're keeping him busy weekly on calls as we continue to kind of hit the home stretch with the Northeast Gateway Small Area Study. So stay tuned. There'll be more information coming around about that as we work with the consultants on working on a date to get them to come in and speak to us. So in alignment with the small area study, we performed some due diligence geotechnical work on the GEDC owned parcel in the small area study, just to make sure that if and when development can take place, that we have all our ducks in a row and have all the studies and site work done to make sure that that site is viable. We updated our work plan at our last meeting with a focus on identifying different areas looking at supporting affordable housing. And then we welcomed one new board member, Kevin Payne. So we have a full board, very active and hardworking, especially on this Gateway study. Moving along to our Garner Chamber of Commerce partnership, very valuable partnership. We work very closely with them, specifically on different programming. The main event, the highlight event, is the Impact Conference, which we just had last week. Very well attended, very informative. Manager Miller gave a great presentation, Garner by the numbers, that was very well received. Heard lots of good feedback about that, and a kind of quick little brief history lesson of the initial town population back in 1910, I believe. So I had the Impact Conference, the Summit Awards, I know that y'all are familiar with. They're a partner on Launch Garner. I know they're working on our next location to visit with the intercity visit. Last year we went to Richmond, had a good visit there to kind of learn a little bit about small business and entrepreneurship and educational assets that they have there. We partner with them on the Small Business Week events that they offer. And then two new programs that they're offering is their leadership program and then a new Garner magazine. I know that they are working on to kind of highlight Garner and everything we have to offer. So very appreciative of that partnership. And speaking of the Impact Conference, so there's Manager Miller speaking to the conference there. And then after that, we went on a bus tour and got to see bird's eye firsthand account of the new VA center. So that was good to see, put on our hard hats and got a full tour of that. So that was a great conference. So that concludes the kind of just recap of just last year's activities and all the work that we're doing. So I just want to stop there just to kind of bookend that before I get into a little bit about opportunity zones. I know that there was a question about opportunity zones. We thought it would be a good time to just kind of include this in the presentation, just to highlight kind of what they are, and then two examples of opportunity zones used in Garner. So what is an opportunity zone? It was established by the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2016, designated certain census tracts as opportunity zones, mainly to encourage investment in lower income areas. There's 2 years left on the program. And really the main kind of just umbrella view of the benefits of this is basically just tax advantages for investors. So there's a step-up basis for capital gains that are reinvested into the Opportunity Fund. And then two of the examples that we have in Garner of facilities that took advantage of this. There's the Opportunity Zone map. So basically you can see the main commercial areas in Garner are captured in that map. And then the two facilities that utilize this in downtown are Aristotle Spirits and the Distillery Event Space. So the investor team purchased the site and used Opportunity Zone tax credits to help them fund this. So just want to be sure just to include that. I did know there was a question about that. So just high level kind of overview of opportunity zones. And happy to answer any questions you have about that or any of the work that we did last year. Thank you.
Okay. Question, comment?
Question, yes, on all three of them. So let's go back to, you were talking about it was the working with the county and we're doing a test on something. Can we elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yes, sir.
Because I got wind of it. It looks like it's all down 1010 highway, or if you pop that back
Yes,
up.
let me go back to because we do have a map of the study area. There we go.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see that it kind of looks like a bow tie right there, yellow bow tie. So that's the area that we're going to be focusing on in this working group, really the 540 corridor there, to see where the infrastructure isn't and where it needs to go.
So are we saying that all of these partners, we're looking at putting infrastructure up and down that entire corridor? Is that what we're saying here?
Yes, sir. Ultimately, yes. So right now we're just trying to figure out where the infrastructure is not located and where it needs to go. And then, of course, you know, the order of magnitude of cost and timelines will be at the end of that. But yeah, right now we're just kind of looking at it. The group is going to hire an engineering firm that can get down and that has access to all the different infrastructure providers to look at basically to see the cost and kind of map that out.
So, we're saying this will be a test area like nowhere else in Wake County. Everything's going to focus on this one area.
Correct. Yes, sir. Right now, yes, sir. We are the pilot program. So Michael Haley, our good friend that you know, reached out and said, hey, you know, infrastructure obviously is very needed in Wake County, and kind of wanted to talk about how we can work on this together. So we, of course, raised our hands and said, we'd love to be a willing partner on this for this first step. Yeah, so right now, Garner's the first community and the only community in it.
Is there a timeline somewhat on this, or?
We don't have one yet, so we just had really our first kind of kickoff meeting about a month ago, where we basically agreed on kind of the scope in the area. And then one of the next steps will be working on finding that engineering consultant that basically can map this out for us. But the good thing is this will be run by Wake County Economic Development, so there won't be any cost to the town of Garner for this.
Okay. The other item I had was downtown Garner. I was looking at the dates and what have you, and it seems like everything is mostly food trucks. So we're looking at, and I remember back in the days, we've had concerts down there. We've had all kinds of things just packing the streets where kids were dancing from all the dancing schools, and they were flooding the businesses down there. Didn't have any coffee shops back then, but what was available, they were spending money down that way. Are we looking at things other than food trucks, something that would be a real draw? A food truck don't excite me. If you got a band playing down there, that excites me. If we got something else going on, maybe with that field behind our center down there, you know, lots of opportunity. I'm just wondering, are we going to broaden our vision as to what we want to do down besides food trucks?
Yes. So we are talking internally. I believe the main holdup of not having any concerts is that there's no power on the field just yet. And correct me if I'm wrong, we're working towards sometime next year of it being. And then once we have power, we are fully ready and want. So it's been a discussion of having concerts on the lawn. It's just a matter of getting the power to it.
Or on the streets down there. I mean, we've had concerts on the streets where we blocked it off. And
I think the main thing there too is power, and that wouldn't be, the power on Main Street is on one breaker. So if you plug into any power on the street, and it trips very easily. So that's why we don't really.
Mr. Matthews, I can provide just a little more detail on that. After the rec center and the lawn were built, we were not able to add some of the type of power that we would like to have for outdoor event space at the time that project was done. So a couple of years ago, we had started looking at adding power there so that we could use our stage in the corner of the green space as we had envisioned it when we did the space. And then as we started moving forward with the LMG project, the way it was originally envisioned, the power to get to the larger original project was going to have to cause some pretty significant retooling of all of the power getting to the downtown area. And so we put a pause on the power to the field. Now that we're moving forward and we know the scope of the LMG project, we're able to go back now and work on getting the power to the field so that we can do things like concerts. When we break ground on the LMG project, we may need to have somewhere to have some of our holiday celebrations and other things that we've been using that lot on Main Street for. And so now that we know the path forward with the LMG project, we can move ahead with adding the power there. And as Shayla said, our hope is that we can do that in time for spring of next year to be able to activate that lawn more.
Because the reason I mention that, that's my background, is doing things like this. And if you've got entertainment there, people will eat, people will patronize the businesses down there. Just rolling in 6 food trucks on a Fridays might or might not. So if we want to create some excitement, I support having things down there. I really want let's do it right and think outside the box. And I drive the town manager crazy with this thinking outside the box, but I got a big vision of things, and I want to see it really be something. And we can do it if we put our heads to it. And the last thing, Mr. Mayor, and I'll shut up because somebody else might have something, but economic development is just a big thing about me. And the opportunity zones, first time I'd got wind of it, the mountain thing, we had a developer come in and present something, if I remember correctly. I think they were from New Jersey or somewhere, and they looked at opportunity zones everywhere. And that was a big thing for their financing or the people backing them because it was a benefit to it. And I seen your map a while ago, and there you go. So I'm thinking, how much are we really promoting the opportunity zones? You say it's going to go away in 2 years. Did I hear
Yes,
you
sir.
correctly?
Yeah, 2 years. And, it's kind of a funny mechanism because it's definitely promoted by tax professionals, real estate professionals know about it. And kind of down at the economic development layer, it's not as highlighted as much because mainly you think of kind of like a typical business recruitment project. There's usually different incentives that are used for those efforts where the real estate investment is usually done beforehand. So that's where, to me, the best examples are the two that we have where, they came in, established a building, provided the investment in there, and then the tenants came afterwards. So that's why I say those two are kind of the best examples of that. But then when the program was started, I was at the state, and I was at the state for almost 6 years. And Garner's the only example of opportunity zones working throughout the state that I was aware of two projects that actually came to full fruition.
Because I see that all the way up and down Highway 70 there, and then I look down at Clayton. I don't know if, like, all their manufacturing on their east side of town on 70, all those big things they're doing out there. I guess it's drug companies and different things down that way.
Right.
On the outside looking in, you think, man, somebody should be all over that because of the benefits off of it, and how much are we promoting? I see some other towns have got, but it looks like we've got a big chunk of it as compared to our neighbors that we could do. Is that a good selling point?
Right.
We're trying to bring people in. Are we using that or?
Yeah, no, absolutely it is. And it's, again, the property owner or broker is going to be well aware or should be well aware that their property is in an opportunity zone to help them market to the, market for investors.
Okay. That's all I got, Mr. Mayor. I don't mean to hog the microphone.
Oh, good questions, good information. Thank you very much. Other questions, comments from council members?
I just have some comments. There's always more work to be done and more goals to reach, but sometimes it's very helpful to look where we've come from. And Garner, the downtown area is not the same as it was when I moved here. It's alive and well, and there used to be nobody parking downtown, and now there's nowhere to park downtown. And that's just amazing to see. Friday night with the food trucks, yeah, I understand about wanting other things beside that, but I'm looking at having my 2 grandchildren over and taking them down there and filling them up because the food truck's going to be down there. So there's a lot more benefits than what we see initially that maybe we need to just kind of focus on some of those things and say, let's be glad for what we've got and then look forward to what more we can do.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just have some questions. It's good to see the affordable housing finding its way into GDC's work plan for next year. Even in our meeting yesterday, Wake County commented that workforce housing is an economic development opportunity. It's not worth bringing a business somewhere if your employees can't live there. A couple of questions. You've mentioned on a couple of occasions that we're running out of these big sites, these sort of traditional economic development sites. And so it leads me to a question, well then what is the plan for Garner 2030? I know our town manager gets tired of hearing me say Garner 2032. What's the plan beyond this sort of traditional economic development opportunity that may or may not come in reality? We may never see these sites get taken up. So, but we all at the same time, we have this huge growing missing middle of retail commercial. And so what is the plan outside of these large traditional sites to support Launch Garner graduates, entrepreneurship? We have some of the weakest retail for our population in Wake County. So what are we doing to fix that?
Yeah, so the quick answer is kind of, many different legs of the stool in economic development. Traditionally, retail economic development is usually driven by population growth. So, for example, I know when we're talking about getting a new grocer in town, all the different real estate departments for those grocers are looking at the population radius, the income, to make sure that it fits their model. So usually, all the traditional retail recruitment is done by the actual businesses that are looking to put a new flag in a location. But that's one thing that I can work with Mr. Hodges on is there are a couple different kind of retail trade shows that go on throughout the country. There's the International Council of Shopping Centers, where if a community is looking for, say, a specific, dining establishment, you can meet with them there. I've also called up a couple. I've been in a different community where, that community wanted something, and I called up that company and said, do you have any plans to locate here? So that's definitely one approach. But kind of right now, traditionally, the way it's done is usually the commercial real estate brokers working directly with those retailers that have run their economic model to see if that locating their business in that community, is viable.
And I bring it up because I've talked with several commercial real estate developers and brokers in the past few months. And one of the issues becomes when you don't have the real estate property, the zoning there, then you get if it's zoned residential, that's all they want to do. But when describing some of the demographics of our area and population growth, we've grown 10,000 people in 4 years. We'll probably grow another 20 in the next 4 or 5 years. We're missing out on the opportunities. And I think sitting back casually, that's probably overstated, but taking the original way things are going, this is the way the brokers do it. We have to be more proactive in getting commercial activity here. And that means protecting our land use plan and doing our own analysis. And some of these folks I talked to were willing to sit with us and filter some of this activity for us. They were a little dumbfounded at the lack of retail opportunity we had for the number of rooftops we have and are in the pipeline and approved. And when you're talking about amenities and tax base, which is what we're in the housing business as a council. All right, we have a UDO that's this thick, and we've got a comprehensive plan. It's all about housing and community. So that's the business we're in. And from an economic development standpoint, businesses that want to relocate here want a community that has amenities, places to shop,
right,
places to take kids, places to recreate outside of just parks. So I have a lot of we need to up our sort of vision of what economic development is. And as Mr. Matthews said, think outside the box, because if all of our sites got taken up tomorrow, what is our plan? And it's things we should be doing in parallel with all of that work. So I'm happy to connect with some folks and start looking at it, but we shouldn't have to leave Town of Garner to shop.
Right.
And that's where we are in our development pattern right now. The other kind of question I had was about these grants for downtown businesses. I'm kind of with Mr. Matthews. I have kind of problems giving money to businesses unless it's a recruitment tool. It's better to use the money to do something that's going to benefit all the businesses equally, whether it's up in the size of an event, getting electricity to the green space. If we're going to spend $15,000, $20,000, do something that's going to be consistent and that's the word I'm looking for. We'll be there. Some infrastructure that's supportive of. So I'm curious to see what that eligibility criteria is and the vision. If the the fiscal conservatism in me on government giving businesses money. The last part of the opportunity zones, is there a comprehensive list anywhere of all projects that have taken advantage of those funds? Because I have a very hard time believing that in that 401 corridor, in that 70 corridor, that no other developers have taken advantage of that. Because I was talking about this and I look back at notes and minutes, 2019 and 2020, trying to get us to push on them a little harder to do what we wanted them to do. So is there a list somewhere that has, where this financing, this tool has been implemented?
So not that I'm aware of, and I actually put in a call to one of the researchers at the Economic Development Partnership in North Carolina the other day as I was putting this together to see if he had that list. I mean, for anywhere in the state, and research, that's what he does every day. That's his primary focus, and he was not aware of a list that captures all of the projects that came to be because of opportunity zones.
Because I know that it's a big Kane project down, South Raleigh project. So this is an opportunity zone. They want to do a big field and mixed use opportunity zone. Tax-free capital gains forever, or for 10 years. And we've got approved so many projects in here. It pains me to think about how much opportunity we've missed on being able to push on them for workforce housing or affordable housing, and they're just getting all this subsidized. If we can find a list somewhere, particularly related to projects we've approved, that would be instrumental. It'd be helpful, and it'd also be helpful to know any that are in the pipeline. So if they're not using it, maybe they can be encouraged. I mean, the program's almost over. It's like 6 years. So that's kind of concerns I have on opportunity zones is why we sort of taken so long to even bring it back to us as a thing that's out there that could, we need to know if they're using it as a tool. Because if you're bringing a project to Garner and you're not paying capital gains on what you build, and when you turn around and sell it in 10 years, you're not paying capital gains on that, and where's the benefit to Garner to just do straight, So that would be insightful to have. Last question I have is last time you were here, now the flex spaces and revenue, when can we expect to get numbers on sort of the net revenue generation on these commercial flex use spaces?
Right. We're still working on that with our partners at Wake County, but I'll get you an update on that timeline.
All right, thank you.
Okay, can you go back to the pilot program of Wake County, if you don't mind, please? Okay, within this corridor, we have two interchanges that were on our economic study
Yes,
as
sir.
to areas for potential future development. And we know that those two areas were 50 and 540, and also 1010 and 540.
Yes, sir.
And with this study, do we understand that it's going to be looking at existing utilities and the gaps that are currently in those locations to try to get to take a proactive look at what's currently out there, so you can know how to possibly connect and for future development. Now, with this, I'm assuming that it'll be public information that developers can look and see as to what is needed and what is needed for development in that area relative to the utilities.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have an idea as to when this will be available?
No, sir. So we just had the first meeting within the last month. I think we envision this to be, many month process, but we don't have a timeline yet of kind of when that further information would be available.
Okay, all right. And the next one, you mentioned it earlier, and you're correct that I can be a witness to the tremendous amount of work that's gone into the Northeast Gateway study, small area study on that. And but just do you have an idea when you'll be able to come back before the council to give them a brief on what has transpired to that location?
So we're working on trying to figure out that date, and then we do have the call tomorrow to talk about kind of final messaging to the consultant team. But we expect to have that date locked in here pretty quickly.
Yep, and that location is, just for the general information for the council and also for those who may be listening, where is that located?
Basically, the intersection of Jones Sausage Road and Interstate 40, directly across the street from Amazon.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I just want to say that for the Chamber Impact Conference, we'll say that it was a great presentation given by our manager Miller. Great job. We want to give a public shout out to that to provide the state of Garner relative to what's going on in Garner overall, and also some of the things that you discussed here relative to economic development. So thank you for that professional delivery last week. Appreciate it. Thank you. That's all I got.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, my colleagues got the MindStars. I agree with Mr. Dillinger that 401 corridor, it's amazing all the way down there. Nobody has taken advantage of this. And as we look at workforce housing, I had an opportunity, shared with everybody, to talk to a lot of those folks at that groundbreaking the other day and how well they are organized. I'm not sure if they're aware of what opportunity zones, could that play a part in their, another notch into what they've got together with their financing, the land development, the management. Those folks are well organized. And if you got an opportunity zone that big and that kind of land out there, are they aware of this? Now, that's that I don't know.
Right.
And should be brought in, 'cause if you got 2 years left on it, that's another notch in the belt that could help these guys out and achieve what we're wanting to do on workforce housing.
I'll tell you, know, they are aware of it. They just don't want to include it.
I wonder why.
But take their money.
And the only other thing, on that, the bow tie we're talking about here, I know we've got the pipes under 540 at those two major intersections. And, is a part of this process maybe even entertaining public-private partnership on water and sewer if developers want to come in there? I think that's kind of what Mr. Vance was alluding to, this, as people look at growing and developing in those areas, that they're aware of this. And is there a way they can be a part of that, or are we at that point yet?
So we're not at that point, but I do believe that would be one of the solutions on the table of, entertaining public-private partnerships. When the parcels are identified and the infrastructure that's not in place is identified, then ultimately the cost.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Other questions, comments? Well, that was a lot of information, a lot of great questions and discussion by council. Thank you very much. This will be an ongoing project, an ongoing dialogue. It doesn't happen overnight. We'll keep pushing. Thank you. Any more?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify about the grant, but that's not coming from any town funding. That is all DGA fundraising dollars, so that's kind of why you're saying it's not going towards project, which we don't have the capabilities or the amount of funding to be able to install power down there. But the idea behind the grant was we have a lot of businesses downtown that are struggling to stay open, and we're trying to be able to provide support to those businesses, even though we only have a small amount of funds that we're able to give. That's why it's kind of small, 2,000. But when businesses need repairs or things, but they're just trying to keep the lights on and keep the rent paid and want to have something that was a little boost for them.
It's a comment.
Yeah.
That's business. And I have hesitancy when, you have funds that could be used to maybe do upfitting for a new business that comes in or support other events that could help them, all the businesses down there. A couple $1,000s is not a significant amount of money. It's not nothing, but when you're talking about keeping, I'd like more information later.
Like I said, right now it's in lawyer review, and then once it's complete with that and we have everything and make sure we meet all the state's legal requirements, I can make sure it is sent to all the council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
And Mayor, if I may provide, I want to acknowledge publicly the work that our staff did in preparing for the Impact Conference last week with the Chamber. I think the information was really well received, and I know a few council members were able to attend that meeting. I just wanted to publicly recognize Mr. Hodges, Mr. Groover, Ms. Douglas, and Ms. Howe. It was a team effort to put that information together and pull all that data together to tell a story of kind of where we've been, where we are, and where we're headed. And so it was, just wanted to publicly acknowledge them and thank them for all their hard work. It was a great story to tell. We've got lots of opportunities and possibilities as we think about the future, but we have to understand where we've been and where we are. And I think that was a really important place to start sharing that information with the community. So I just wanted to thank them.
You sent that out too.
I did. So I sent it out earlier today, the slide deck for council members, just so you have the information, the data that was shared with the chamber members at the event, in case you get any questions regarding the information.
that was an excellent presentation. It was great information. And if we can just pull a few pages here and there to show someone about what you're talking about right then, it was very illuminating. So thanks to the whole team that pulled that together. That was made a very strong impression. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, moving right along to item number 3, the next major item. We'll see if we can get this done by 8 o'clock, the witching hour for the recess. We'll do our best shot. We'll take a break as needed, or we'll come back. I know not to go past 8 o'clock.
Yeah, we better not go past
Okay, so let's move to the council code of conduct and ethics. Clearly, everybody is in favor of good conduct and good ethics, but it's easy to say it, it's hard to paint the picture of it and put the details. Our town attorney, Terry Jones, has been working hard for a couple of months, pulling this together. We had not done a thorough revision of this in a number of years, I think. And I'd like to ask Ms. Jones to give us a little update, kind of where we are in our process, what possible next steps are. Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was illuminating to hear from so many speakers about town councils over the years, that members can disagree but continue to show respect and maintain friendships with each other. And I think that's what's embodied in the Code of Conduct and Ethics. And I would like to thank Assistant Town Attorney Erin Gibbs on her work on this for the past few months as well. Just to give you a brief recap, yes, in 2009, 2010, the state General Assembly required that every municipality adopt an ethics resolution or policy, which the town did, and for a long time, I think it wasn't referenced when issues have come up. So the legal department was asked to draft, to update this, draft a code of conduct to address some situations that are happening on the international, national, state level with the conduct of public business. So that was presented to the town council at your June 25th work session, and we've received feedback from each council member. But because this is such an important document for how the council members treat each other, how you treat the public, how you treat staff, that it does require the buy-in of all members of council in order to be a successful document and guide for your conduct and actions in the future. Again, just to refresh on the resolution that was adopted in 2010, it really had 5 sections that closely mirrored what the state said that had to be covered. And then again, an ideal code of conduct is mutually agreed upon expectations about how council will ensure that government is open and effective. And it provides for individual council members to commit to speaking and behaving in accordance with the expectations and to holding each other accountable when expectations are not met. And then again, an ideal code of conduct will be reviewed periodically to evaluate whether the expectations need to be revised. In many jurisdictions, this is done every time there's an election or a change in the membership, but can certainly be done on whatever schedule that council thinks is appropriate. So some of the comments, that we received is, do we want this code of conduct to be aspirational or to be more of a these are problems that we've noticed and we need to address those issues. So an aspirational code of conduct, is very positive in its tone. A more regulatory one, sends a negative message. We're going to punish bad behavior or things that have crossed the line. An aspirational code of conduct, council really sets the example for town staff and the public on how to interact with each other and to get the business, the public business done. An aspirational code of conduct will also instill public confidence in the political process and, one of the distinctions is, you praise in public and you criticize in private, but reminding everyone that written comments would also be public records. The difficulty with regulatory or punitive types of code of conduct is it tends to be very difficult to define what speech or behavior crosses the line. Like many things, I think you know it when you see it, but it's hard to say there is a line in the sand that says you can talk about this but not this, or you can use this tone of voice and not that in a particular situation. So just again, a refresher, the draft code of conduct has 8 sections that the original 5, and then adding some additional information. And this, we looked at codes that many different jurisdictions did and tried to borrow the best things from each of those. And again, the original code of ethics did have a dispute resolution process, and that's basically that you would do a censure resolution, but only after notice and an opportunity to be heard. In the research that I've done, it's unclear whether these censures have to be done in open session. I think some of the other jurisdictions where this has happened, members have wanted to do it in open session. But there are conflicting provisions in state law. In the Open Meetings Act, there is language that says you may hear or investigate a complaint, charge, or grievance by or against an individual public officer or employee in a closed session. But the same provision also says you may not consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, or removal of a council member in a closed session. So obviously a code of conduct is going to look at the character, fitness, and performance generally of council members. So this is the list. It's a fairly short list, 8 items that appear to need a little bit of additional discussion to make sure that council has a consensus that this is what you want in your code of conduct and ethics. And I'll go over each of those in a little bit more detail. So one of those is defining unacceptable speech or conduct. And there's several examples in the draft about never belligerently challenging or belittling a speaker, no personal attacks. And as I was thinking about how do you make this more aspirational, other than be nice to everyone, these are kinds of examples of where other jurisdictions have said this is the kind of thing that crosses the line. Now it's all very subjective because one person may be intimidated by a loud voice and another, will shout right back at them. So it's very difficult to define these, but so they are inherently subjective. But these are the examples that are currently in the draft that I would say, are saying that this is unacceptable. This is a time, are there any additional examples that weren't included that you feel need to be in the code of conduct and ethics?
I think kind of as a general rule, and there's sort of a theme in this, is conflict of choice. You challenge an idea, you attack an idea, not a person, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the baseline is not whether it's council, speaker, somebody from the public. You're not attacking the person. And so at least at the baseline, regardless of what your tone may be, intentionally or unintentionally, you're not attacking the individual. And so I think that's sort of a floor, and then we can go up from that floor in the language.
Yes, just my one comment would be kind of building on what Damien's saying. This is about being aspirational. It's about being positive. We're so fortunate we are not reacting to a bad incident. We're trying to correct past bad behavior. We have not had bad behavior. We're trying to be proactive, lay out some guidelines, set the tone that the council leads by example to other public discussions here and other places of courtesy, of respect, of dealing with the facts. So we're not reacting to bad behavior. We're not talking about more penalties and being more punitive. This is being proactive to get out ahead of it, to learn from our other communities what they write down as words and guidelines and suggestions, because there's really not a police that comes around and enforces this. This is mutually agreed upon. It's going to be a little difficult to make every word perfect for every situation, or to foresee every situation we might want to refer to, but I think it's important that we do something that's less than 23 years old to kind of speak to today's world, knowing what the dialogue is in other places. Proactively, not responding reactively after the fact. So thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for the process. We need to move ahead and have something we can salute as a guideline, something that we can adjust later as needed, because clearly we're writing this book. We have the ability to adjust this book later as needed. Hopefully not every week or two, or every month or two, but certainly every 2 years with new people come on board or potentially coming on board. We want to think about these things. We won't say this as the Pledge of Allegiance every 2 weeks, but we want this out there to think about and refer to. So thank you for what you're doing. What are next steps to help us get this finalized?
And yes, Mr. Mayor, I mean, you exactly said it. This is your code of conduct. This is how you expect, and you have to police it. This is not an ordinance where a citizen can file a lawsuit and say you crossed the line. It's really for each of the members of the council to decide what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So just, I'll go through a few more slides and then talk about what the potential options and next steps are. So again, we talked a little bit about, trying to make it more aspirational and positive, and trying to make the statements go through and say, council should do this rather than council should not do something else. There were several members asked about removing redundant language, and yes, probably section 8 is the longest section, and it's currently organized around, interactions with the public at public meetings, interactions with the public in unofficial settings, social media, which will be interactions, electronically, and then interactions between the council members both in private as well as public meetings, and then interactions with staff. Many of these sections include common themes, and several of them overlap with the council rules of procedure. So I have looked at, perhaps we can streamline down the code of conduct and ethics and remove those procedural and keep those as 2 separate documents. So that is one option. Trying to provide a roadmap and which as much detail as possible. If you do want it streamlined, we certainly, could do that, because again, there are common themes about, respect and civility in how you deal with not only yourselves, but the public and with town employees. Another issue that comes up is the respecting the decision of council. So right now in your council rules of procedure, which is in Rule 42, which is known as the decorum rule, this was probably the rule that was brought into the rules of procedure to address certain things that happened, over the course of, council's interactions and changing since, 2010. But it currently says that after a decision is made by a majority of town council, the minority should respect and honor the decision, and that elected officials should avoid public acts or comments that impugn the town staff, or its processes. And there was a little bit of tweaking with the language of this from what was in the original draft of the rules of procedure. So that's what's currently in effect in your rules of procedure. And then you can see on the other side that, once a vote has been taken, the minority must respect the majority, and no member should attempt to renegotiate, undo, or interfere with any council-approved action or project except through a valid motion for reconsideration. So I know there's some concerns about this particular language and how that allows each member to retain their ability to voice their opinion, and also have an option for going back and looking at a decision that's been previously made. And there are in your rules of procedures how to go about doing a motion for reconsideration. You really can bring things back up again at any time other than certain planning and development decisions which become vested rights, and you can't necessarily, undo those. But most actions you do, until you commit to a contract, you can reconsider those. But I know this is an area that some members wanted to discuss further.
That's me. I'll be brief, and I just really feel like my interpretation of the council as a body is that once the council takes an action, it is the action of the body. There's no majority or minority in how the vote happened. It is our collective action, and we are at that point responsible for it. The good parts of it, the bad parts of it is our collective action. And I think it can probably most be easily remedied by taking out the word minority, and the council will respect the action. I think the difficulty comes in, this sort of defines respect in a better way, and not going outside of a motion to reconsider, undermine the decision of council. And I think we're all good at that. I think that's what we do. We kind of move on. But I think when you start dividing up how the vote was, how it manifested itself, and saying, well, you don't have standing to be critical of this decision, it kind of undermines the process. We debated, we had conversation. 4 people thought this way, 1 thought this, 3, 2, whatever. But once the vote's taken, it's our collective decision. And so that was the tweak in the language, is sort of not creating a bifurcation on any issue in a way that gives some council members more standing than others to bring it back up again. So.
Very good observations, accentuate the positive, and next steps are what do we need to do next?
All right. Just bear with me. A couple of other items that I don't want to overlook. We did add social media to this because of the recent Supreme Court decision. And so there is guidance because some things that you may say or do on your personal social media accounts could create liability for the town, and that is recommended that your social media accounts have a disclaimer that indicates that these are your individual views and do not reflect the official view of the town or town council. And then obviously you could use the town's official web pages and things to communicate those messages that are official town actions or official town positions. Now, along those lines, many individuals will have campaign sites, and while those are separate from the town, as I looked at the draft, it probably is fair to say that when you're campaigning for office, you may not have voted on certain things that constituents don't like, and you should probably have an opportunity to explain why you did or didn't vote for a particular project. So again, this is something for you to think about. What is your expectation of this? Again, this is your code of conduct and ethics, and although even the original one talked about candidates for office, people who are candidates for office, you can't necessarily regulate in this way. They don't have to necessarily abide by these rules, although you would hope that they would pledge to either abide by this code of conduct and ethics or work to change what they think needs to be changed. So these are things to think about. Should campaigning be subject to different standards than you serving on this body and conducting business in public meetings, public settings? And then again, there were concerns about clarifying any terms that were unclear. It is important to know, so that everyone's on the same page, that you know and agree to what's expected, knowing that some of these standards are inherently subjective. So I'd ask you to, again, think about what types of speech or conduct would violate your expectations or standards, And then, do you want the same standards to apply to meetings, private conversations, and social media? And then there was one other thing, the commitment to training. You're required to do your state mandated ethics training within 12 months of each time you're elected to office. All of the council members have committed to participating in the League of Municipalities Commit to Civility training. And we'll also have a special training session next week on avoiding certain liability issues. But do you want to place an additional mandate on a number of training and a number of hours of training each year? And do you want to specify those topics, or do you want to just allow the town manager and the town attorney to suggest when training is appropriate or maybe needed, or when council decides that particular training on a topic is desirous, then, we would provide that, as has been done in the past, without necessarily a mandate on a fixed number of hours or certain topics to be discussed. All right, so Mr. Mayor, getting to your question that you've asked a couple of times, you have a couple of options. You could just maintain the existing code of ethics that was adopted in 2010. You could adopt the proposed resolution without any changes, or you could provide further instructions for revisions to this. And so what my proposal would be is after you receive the training at next week's meeting, provide any final comments you have on some of the language with this. I will work on getting you a streamlined draft, which will separate the two things, and then potentially, if there's consensus of council, putting this on the consent agenda on at the September 17th meeting for adoption.
Yes, I like that transition there. I like the education we'll be getting a week from tonight in reality and current trends. We'll have another couple of weeks to look at this in detail and then make our final decision. Are we ready to move ahead? Look at your refined, condensed version. We still have a couple other decision points between now and when it might come up on September 17th. So let's keep studying, let's do our homework. I would ask everybody to pay close attention, read through it. It doesn't take long to read. It doesn't take long to circle something you have some concern about the clarity. Have a private conversation with Ms. Jones. Let's work through this and have something we can salute 3 weeks from now, if possible. If we can't, we'll do something else. Do your homework, study it, talk with your attorney. I'm seeing some nods.
All right.
It's 8 o'clock. We're going to take a 7-minute break. Please be back here by 12 after the hour. Oh, the lights just flicked. That's
We will follow up with those and provide that information to council. Make sure it's part of the agenda packet.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Looking under the old new business section of our September 3rd meeting, just as I mentioned, the 3412 Benson Road public hearing is going to be continued. They're also asking for that second item to be continued as well. So those will both move forward to the October meetings. And then we have a closed session to consult with the attorney at our September 3rd meeting. Looking forward to the Tuesday, September 17th meeting, we've got some presentations, some special recognitions of some recent achievements by our inspection staff. I'm excited to recognize them. We have a few items on the consent agenda, one which you've talked about this evening, if council is ready to take action on the adoption of a code of conduct and ethics based on your discussions to date and any additional updates and follow-up between now and the September 17th meeting. Also bringing back to council just some budget amendments related to some recent grants and scholarship funding for the Parks, Rec, and Cultural Resources Department. We've got several public hearings that also scheduled for our meeting on the 17th. Looking at 2311 Parkway Drive, the Jurgen Park, also a public hearing on Jurgen Park, Bethel Green, and then Pool Drive fuel cells. So that'll be coming forth at the September 17th meeting. And there's no additional old or new business scheduled or additional reports other than your monthly Talk of the Town report slated for this time. And then a final reminder that our work session in September is going to be on Thursday, September 26th. Note that meeting date has changed from the Tuesday date. That's allowing staff to attend the ICMA conference this year, and we appreciate the support of council allowing us to do that. Right now, we have a tentative discussion update on the Lake Benson Master Plan. This is in relation to some of the concepts and interests that council have in looking at moving forward with a boathouse project for the Lake Benson area and replacing the existing boathouse. We'll also have, as part of that meeting, our pending agenda report, and then, as we'll discuss in just a few moments, our development services activity map update as well. So that's what we have so far included on our meetings for September. As always, this is where we're starting from at this point in our meeting schedule. There may be additions or changes as we get further into the month of September. Happy to answer any additional questions the council may have this evening.
Let me say, it makes my heart feel so good to see Lake Benson Park Master Plan update. We started the Lake Benson Master Plan in 1994. Because I was in charge, I was in the chair of the committee. And that plan's probably long gone and nobody knows where it is or what happened to it. But anyway, we're updating a plan from almost 30 years ago that nobody knows about the original plan. But in that original plan, there was a nature center, which ended up at White Deer Park. Because we get the point out there. And that was discussed, but was nothing definite on the boathouse. But extra shelters came because of that plan. The trail became because of that plan. So anyway, it gives my heart good to see a plan that's some 30 years old that nobody knows anything about but me or cares about is being updated.
Well, we're excited to bring it forth for further discussion and opportunities.
I think we all are receptive to the boathouse and so forth. We've discussed that many times. So anyway, it's nice to see the plan get updated.
And Attorney Jones had a few things to share.
And at one point, council members had asked about training on quasi-judicial proceedings, such as the special use permits. And it looks like this work session might be a good opportunity to do that training. If you would like to, I could prepare for that, and then to also invite the Board of Adjustment to that meeting. This would be one of their normal meeting nights. They don't have a caseload for this month coming up, but if you would like to have that, we could slot that in for that work session.
That's agreeable. We'll go ahead and add that to the pending agenda document. We'll work towards that presentation and training at the September work session. All right.
Thank you.
All right. As we started a few months ago, we wanted to share with council sort of any updates regarding development in town, and especially as we as the planning department adds new information about projects or new projects into our development activity map. So, Mr. Hodges, would you go over the recent updates and changes?
Yes, thank you, Manager Miller. We've had 3 projects that have been added in the applications in progress purple color category. One is down off near 1010 Road. This project is listed as the, sorry, let me zoom in to get the name here, the Hutchins property, and this is a project that some council members may have heard about that had previously come in. It is behind a county subdivision that is accessed off of 1010 Road, and so that has been added to the map this time. That one does have site plan information, and you can see the site plan that is proposed there.
That came for us under another name at one time.
And
correct?
then did not move.
And did not move, and
Did not.
that one, at one time, that's not the one, the Hocutt property is the one that connects to Eagle, or is proposed to connect to Eagle.
Yes, sir, and that was one that was pointed out, I believe, at last month's meeting as being new on the map then, but if you haven't seen that one, the Hocutt property is one that will eventually, as proposed, connect into Eagle Ridge, and then possibly a county subdivision.
It was called something else last time, Topper.
It was Copper Ridge at the
Copper
time,
Ridge,
and it's
thank you.
coming back in, and the project name will likely change, but right now it's just being referred to by the property, the name that's on it.
Gotcha.
So that one went all the way through Planning Commission, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
And
The Copper Ridge, and then it did not come back.
Does this iteration have the 1010 improvements on it, or has that been removed?
I believe that this one has some frontage improvements and some encouragement, because it's limited frontage.
Right.
Some encouragement for participation or encouragement of other improvements.
What does that mean?
We can only require the frontage improvements, but we have shared with the developers that council has expectations for consideration of things that would be important to the area, but cannot be required by staff. So, sorry for my.
No. Got it.
John, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
And I think we've had this conversation. Again, I'm thinking outside the box again, but as we approve these things, and we've had some, especially like on 50, is it a way we can, if we approve something and it's shovel ready, and the developer sits on it for 5 years, is a way we can put a limitation on how long they can set on that project? Because things change. Infrastructure, things can change. Who knows?
Yes, sir.
Other development that we could, and I don't know how everybody else thinks about it, but we could put a timeline and say, if you don't do something with that property, and for the sake of argument, say 3 years, you got to come back before us and present it again, because things change. Is that something we
Yes,
need to
sir,
look at?
and we do recognize that council's asked about that before, and we've been trying to figure out exactly how we would go about doing that. So we haven't forgotten that to do or that request. And I don't know if Ms. Jones has anything else to add tonight, but we do have some timestamps there. There's also a situation where when things get approved by council, rarely are they shovel ready. And I think there's often a perception that when council approves them, we're going to see shovels turning very soon. There's often as much as 12 to 24 months of design work still left before shovels are likely going to be in the ground, just from a practical standpoint. But Ms. Jones might could elaborate on some of our time criteria that are already in our approvals.
And y'all could come up with that number or whatever. I'm just using that as an example, but to come up with something that would.
So it's a complicated issue, and I have that on the list to do research and a legal opinion on what your options could be. There are some vested rights under state law that we can do that talk about 2 years to 5 years for things like special use permits and things. But unfortunately, there's also what's called common law vested rights, which are judicial decisions where there may be other rights that developers obtain from an approval from government that unfortunately there aren't bright lines. Projects get appealed through the court system, and then the courts tell us whether they had a lot of those are investment based. But so when you see that things haven't happened, they may be going through getting the permitting process. But yes, we're looking at what the options council might have to do with those kinds of situations where projects appear to be dormant for a long time, and times change and conditions and expectations change.
Right. So it's sort of like front end is kind of, you're more on the back end. My position would be you don't approve what's not ready to go. and you vote no, and they can come back in a year. But also, there's two issues. One is the applicant for the rezoning a broker or a developer? That can have an impact too on that timeline. Then there are market forces that happen too. But my other question then is there a way, in certain circumstances with developer agreements that are in place, to have those types of timelines kind of baked in, and then, you know, they have triggers of 2 years. If you haven't gotten to this milestone, you've got to come back and, you know, not explain yourself, but, you know, readjust the timeline or lose whatever benefit of with a contract. We can do a lot more. So I guess that's sort of, so again, I think we're limited on, after we've approved something, we're very limited on the statutory side on what we can do. We're in a much better position if we're making those decisions in a proactive way and having those conversations early and really getting a sense of what their timeline and structure is. But because you don't want something to get approved and sit there and just languish forever.
10 years or something like that. Yeah.
Well, we had in place at one time, a CUP, SUP had 2 years, and then they could come back and ask for another 12 months as an extension. So has that been outruled by the legislature?
So right now, yes, in the UDO, it's 2 years, and then it could be expanded up to 5 years, and that's based on what's in Chapter 160D. For just your, like, SUP type approval, you know, certain approvals like that. A rezoning tends to be like you're rezoning it to allow any of those uses. They could come back and apply for those uses, which may go through more of a site plan or subdivision type approval, staff level approval process in the future. With a development agreement, you can go with a longer time period, and in the statute also talks about periodic monitoring and compliance and sort of your interim milestones to make sure the project, and then there's also multi-phased projects. So you might be looking at the entire development, but they're really breaking it down into each phase, and is each phase moving along in those time periods. But on top of that, then there's always the risk that a developer could go to court and say, no, I've made investments and I now have a vested right that's not a statutory vested right. So we'll be doing that research to look at what those options are, and then also perhaps to make sure that on that, after approval, that we are diligently making sure that they are moving forward and applying for building permits and doing those. Now, there was a time during the COVID pandemic where also the state legislature said, you can't, you know, basically they were grandfathered into a status and you couldn't terminate their permits with much longer because of, you know, the inability to get certain things done. So there's always the risk, again, no matter what the town might want to do, that the legislature will come in and say, for, you know, it's a recession, it's, you know, there's a, you know, pipeline shortage of things, and you can't terminate a project. So, but we'll never be able to predict those. But that may be contributing to some of the time lag that it appears on some projects that were approved that sat dormant during the 3 years of COVID.
Okay. Just want to make sure, we're just curious to make sure, to see if that was still in place.
Right.
Two other items have been added to the map. Both of them are Habitat for Humanity projects. One is a small project on Weston Road that some council members may be familiar with from discussing with Habitat or seeing some concepts. This project originally was going to use some land at the back of Thompson Industrial Park Phase 2 that is no longer a part of the project. So you will see a site plan there that has been reimagined that makes use of some central courtyard and open space and sort of a different look and feel for the project that you may have seen here before. And then we also have another Habitat project that was added that is called the Gatewood subdivision, and it is the Habitat project that I think some council members have heard about that adjoins the Creech Road subdivision, which is a current Habitat project that was already approved, and they've started doing some work on that. And this Gatewood subdivision would be in addition to that, and it wraps around the existing Gatewood subdivision that was there. So I think some of council may be familiar with the location, but you'll see a site plan associated with that as well. So those are the new projects that have been added since the last update. And if there's any questions about these, I'll be glad to try and answer them or get you some answers and follow up to tonight's meeting. Yes, sir.
So is there an update on that Vale assemblage project? Because that was the one that had, I remember the meeting, they're like, oh, it's a cheap bridge to do across the creek there. What's the status of that project, if you have it?
We are still working with the developers to encourage them to look at some additional options for that project.
Okay, thank you.
And the last two projects that you've shown us, once again, any proposal comes up here and all they're gonna do is fix a little sliver of Creech Road and dump about 300 homes between the two of them, I believe. And they're not gonna improve the road.
Any other questions that we can answer tonight regarding the development map?
Right there by the curve now. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I had to get that one out. Right where it is.
All right, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges. Just one more update I'd like to share with the council. The mayor and I and our Parks and Rec and Cultural Resources Director and Communications Director had the privilege of meeting the U.S. Secretary of Interior and the Assistant Secretary of Interior today, as well as state officials, and meeting with the governor, Congressman Nickel, to talk about the grant for the Jurgen Park project, the $8.5 million that we're being awarded for the project. So we started off the day over at the Dupree House under some shady pines, talking about the project, showing details to the Secretary and Assistant Secretary and their staffs. They were thrilled and excited to be there on site to learn more about the project. Then they went over to the city of Raleigh and learned about their grant-funded project there. And we ended the day with a media event where we were hosted by not only the secretary and her staff, but also the governor and other state officials to really talk about and celebrate the awards. So the town will get $8.6 million. City of Raleigh's getting $8.7 million for their project. Over $17 million is coming to North Carolina from the Interior Grant Program. And as they shared with us, it's about a third of the funding available for the entire grant program is coming to the state of North Carolina. So we're very excited about adding this additional funding to the Jurgen Park project. I want to publicly thank and acknowledge our Parks and Rec Director, Maria Menunez-Blanco, and her team at Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources, not only for their diligence in putting the grant application together, but the follow-up and work that's going to be ahead to receive the grant, but also their help and assistance with setting up the show and tell of the Jurgen Park property earlier today. Also want to thank Public Works for their assistance in the site tour today. They made sure that everything was in good working order, everything looked nice. We were able to really sort of showcase the property and help the secretary really understand the vision for the overall project. So just want to highlight that and thank everybody involved. And Mayor, you were there with me most of today, celebrating those announcements. And so I don't know if there's anything else you would like to share.
I'd just like to share how much I was impressed by the teamwork that went in to make this happen. Everything from the National Department of Interior, or right on down to National Parks. At a national level, they were involved in this. Our state parks people, Wake County was a huge partner, made a very significant contribution toward this project as well. There were a lot of people working on this outside of the town of Garner and within the town, from Public Works to Parks and Rec. Everybody just chipped in and made just a fantastic result, a huge step forward for our citizens and the people who want to use that park. It was inspirational.
And it really highlights the opportunity of leveraging the bond dollars. And when the town and voters decided to approve the bond dollars, one of the opportunity that provides the town then is to take that as matching dollars or seed money for projects in order to leverage it for these additional funding sources. And so getting these multi-million-dollar grants is really important, and it's because of the bond projects and the support of the council and the community that we're able to leverage those dollars. So thank you. That's all I have for my updates and reports this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions the council has.
Hearing no questions, we'll move to the attorney reports.
No report tonight. I think I took up plenty of your time earlier.
Okay, well, let's jump to some council reports and recognize council members that will make a report about your committee or your experience in general. We'll start with Mr. Vance.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to say that on the 21st of this month, we had the celebration of 50 years with Meals on Wheels at the Senior Center. Had the opportunity to be there. It was a great event, and the Senior Center gets a lot of use, and the seniors were having a good time. I may, in fact, go over there and learn how to line dance with the seniors.
Let's don't go too far. Let's don't go too far.
Please make that the second Thursday of the month when I do meals, because I want to go over there and watch.
Maybe not, but maybe
I want to go there before I pick my meals up and watch you line dance.
Yes, sir. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what.
Video it when you do.
I will.
But it was a great event, a great time, and a great celebration for a great organization. And I'd like to also say that the Affordable Housing Task Force met on yesterday. Had a great meeting. We had one of our partners, Wake County, come in and give us a briefing on housing affordability and the community revitalization. They have a great program going on and resources that would maybe possibly be incorporated in our endeavor in affordable housing. That was really good, and we were able to start to establish a structure to establish a timeline for hitting the milestones we have established, so that we can come back and brief the council, and in the time allotted next year. That's when the official full briefing and the recommendation will be made in January, hopefully January, February timeframe, to the council as to what was the what are the recommendations from the Affordable Housing Task Force. And throughout this period, is the intent of the task force to provide the council with a status report to let you all know where we are in the process. And other than that, that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for the great work on that Affordable Housing Task Force. That's extremely important. Mr. Dellinger.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I just want to reiterate Mr. Vance's observations on the task force. It's really encouraging to have Wake County be there, and it's encouraging that we, have kind of all hands on deck from a staff perspective in those meetings in an attentive way. And we've got an aggressive timeline, but we're going to make it work and come back with some good recommendations. It's a lot of good work being done there. Thank Mr. Vance for his leadership on corralling all those personalities.
Teamwork.
Teamwork, yes, absolutely. Just also the hats off to Parks and Rec and all the other departments involved in getting that grant money many years ago, well, not many, 4 or 5 years ago, kind of having that emphasis on getting those philanthropic dollars is really starting to pay off. We're building a lot of institutional knowledge and experience, and that's helping. We've got great projects to fund. That helps too. The other thing I wanted to discuss next week briefly, but wanted to put in council's ear as we talk about ethics, is if there any precedent, I guess it's a question for Terry, for ethics for people who come to council or applicants, and how they engage with council. Because I think if we have a code of ethics that is public and transparent and exudes courteousness and politeness, we'd always have those same folks coming to us. And so we have kind of the question of how do we as a council engage with parties that are not going to, who are going to present misleading information to us or blatant lies to us, and how in the moment are we going to address that in a civil way? And then also with an ethics for them, how do we get them to understand what their expectations of them are when they come to us? So I want council to be thinking about that, because sometimes you don't want to be with one hand tied behind your back up here, and you don't have to if you're on the same level of respect with who's standing up here. So how do we elevate the respect level? There've been some instances where we've had applicants speak harshly to our planning commission, for example. How do we prevent that from ever happening again in a proactive way? And then again, when it comes to factual information, there would be an expectation that if you aren't presenting factual information, you may take the time to go get the right information. So make sure you're coming with factual information. So I want to put that in everyone's ear because I think we need to be on the same, everyone needs to be at the same level of respect up here and from down there. So that's all I've got.
Good observation, Ms. Behringer.
Yes, just one item. Some weeks ago, I distributed some information to everyone about the request for a scholarship, the town to do a scholarship in honor of Harold Garner, and the manager sent out an email asking us what our thoughts are, and just wonder where we are with that issue, that item.
Councilmember Behringer, I have heard back from a few of the council members who said they're willing to entertain the request as part of the FY26 budget process. So I'll follow up with a few others just to make sure that that is the consensus of the council, and we will make sure that we address it as part of the FY26 budget request.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Singleton?
Yes, I pulled up our Facebook page, and Mr. Mercer's got a nice story about this, the event today at Jurgen Park. Also saw it was on CBS 17. Didn't see it on other, I don't know if any other TV channel was there, but anyway, they got a nice story. Hadn't seen it yet on RAL. I don't know if they were there or ABC 11, so it's good to see those things there. And glad to know, I know we got updated at the last meeting about some information regarding the parks. I started thinking, it's been 13 or 14 years when I talked to Mr. Jurgen first about, hey, one day when this land becomes available, how about, let's talk about doing something that's for a town park. And I was tied in with the foundation, tied in with his aunts who were still both living, and took time, but anyway, it'd be nice to see it break ground out there one day. I don't know if we'll live to see it get finished, but anyway, long as it's taken, the grant's a nice big chunk to help, and hopefully we'll be able to take advantage of that. And also, as noted in email response, maybe we'll be able to do some minimal work at Meadowbrook to get it opened, with some minimal work so people can use the facility and have some green space on there and a place to walk and so forth. So anyway, hopefully and we don't know because what prices will be, so we can't get too excited because we don't know what bids will be, but it looks like that's somewhat stabilized right now. Let's just hope when our opportunity comes with Jurgen Park, it'll be stabilized, and we can take advantage of this grant in more ways than one. So anyway, it's good news. Glad we were able to apply and get that type of funding and leverage those bond dollars.
Good news indeed. Mr. Matthews?
Just dittos and whatever else is said, but I just was privileged to be at that Trine Road project the other day for affordable housing out there, that opening, and got a chance to talk to a lot of people. And I know I shared with Mr. Vance and yourself that it was just a melting pot of good officials from everywhere, and they were very pleased with Garner and the way our staff and everybody had worked with them, and the press was out there, good media coverage, and they're excited about that project. And I said, we might need to be doing some more. Why don't you, let's talk. So it all left on good terms because all the players were there. And,
yeah.
So I just wrapped my arms around all of them.
Yeah, that was eye-opening to see how many different entities, governmental entities, et cetera, were involved in that. A lot of teamwork, a lot of input, but it will be definitely successful. So that was a lot of fun.
They're looking very favorable at us. So
yeah.
Whatever you guys come up with.
Look good. Okay. Well, that concludes our agenda on the regular items. It looks like we do have an issue or two that needs to be discussed in closed session. Is there a motion to move to a closed session?
So moved.
Let's see, and we need to make the right citations, I believe, if Ms. Jones will help us out.
I can go
Mr.
ahead and
Van?
get this right.
Yes, it's in the agenda.
Ms. Matthews.
NC General Statute, Section 143.318.11, Alpha Sierra, to discuss the possibility of real estate acquisition in the town's negotiating position regarding such real estate. And I make a motion to enter this session.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Matthews, second by Mr. Singleton. All in favor of moving to a closed session as described, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Hearing none, it's unanimous. We will move to a closed session. We will return a little bit later. Stick around if you like. Thank you for coming.
Right.
We're ready. Okay. And now we return to our regular session after the closed session. And I will ask our attorney to give us a summary of what happened in the closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council met in closed session to instruct staff on the town's position in negotiating price or other material terms of an agreement for the acquisition of several different real properties.
Thank you. And if there's no other business or no other questions from council members, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Matthews and second by Mrs. Behringer. All in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Thank you. We stand adjourned.